What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in and listening yet again on this Monday early afternoon. Just want to go over some of the big sports highlights from the previous week. Want to touch on some PGA, quick Champions League update, and my thoughts on that. We'll get into the Olympics and the exciting gold medal finishes for the men and women's U.S. ice hockey. Super exciting. We'll do a quick Brewers-Packers update with some NFL free agency thoughts. Then we'll get into the current state of the Bucks. And then we'll finish with kind of these a random NBA and then a random NFL thought that I've had after listening to these countless ideas of the tanking issue in the NBA. And it kind of also made me think about some of the rules and the changes that the NFL has seen, so I had a random thought about that as well, but we will get into that towards the end. I do want to start quickly with the PGA. It was the Genesis Invitational over the weekend in the Pacific Palisades, California. American Jacob Bridgman ended up winning. 18 under is what his final score was. Very exciting finish. He actually was trailing, or I shouldn't say trailing. McIlroy was trailing by 7 shots at one point, so Bridgman had 7-shot lead on the competition at one point, but that evaporated into essentially a 1-shot lead because McIlroy on the 18th hole, on the 18th green, even with Tiger Woods watching, sunk a pretty ridiculous, probably 30-foot putt. And of course, the crowd goes wild. This is why we love sports. And he really put the pressure on Jacob Bridgman, who was at that point only 1 shot ahead. He was at minus 18. McIlroy was 17 under after sinking that putt. Bridgman ended up having a birdie putt of his own on the 18th, and he left it well short. Like, you still got some pizza in that box short. And he stepped up. You could feel his nerves, but he ended up sinking it. There you go. He sunk his par putt, ended up taking home the victory by a single stroke over McIlroy, and with that, a $4 million purse and 700 FedEx Cup points, which I would also like to mention now that we've had a couple tournaments and invitationals for the new season. Jacob Bridgman now with that victory is in first place for the PGA 2026 standings. In second place right behind him by a mere 3 points. You have Chris Gotterup, and then about 23 points behind him you have Scotty Scheffler. So those are your top 3 right now: Bridgman, Gotterup, Scheffler in the 2026 standings. I just want to mention the Tommy Fleetwood on his second shot on the 15th, on the par 4 15th. He was about 173 yards out. He hit a shot that literally just dropped straight into the hole. It was pretty cool to see, and Fleetwood, rightly so, had a huge smile on his face. That was fun to see. We also saw Max Greiserman with his first ace on the tour, which was fun as well. He was getting a bunch of high fives and applause, rightly so. And then again, Scheffler, he had a phenomenal shot out of the front of a bunker. He put it a couple feet within the pin. But once again, I was looking at him, and in his backswing, it seemed like he just opened up another plane at the tip of his backswing. Like there was a little extra movement there. But anyway, I didn't want to harp on it too much as I did last week. Still feel like there's a little bit of a change there. But he played really well in his round 4. Had a couple very nice shots. So in the end, Bridgman almost giving up a 7-point or a 7-shot lead, which would have been a heartbreak, but ends up taking home the win. And then real quick into the Champions League, I just wanted to mention This is the second season now that the Champions League has moved on to this new format, which I'm a big fan of. And of the top 8 teams that move on automatically into the knockout stages, 5 of those teams are English teams. And also worth mentioning, teams that ended up in the 25th through 36th place, who essentially got knocked out of the Champions League after their 8 games, there was not a single English team amongst them. So the reason I want to bring this up is because this, for me, is just becomes, you can't argue against England being the top league in Europe or even for soccer in the world anymore. Just in terms of the talent, the brutality, the technical aspects, the EPL is the best soccer league in the world. And this is proof. And it's tough to argue. So that was my thought on the Champions League and where we are right now. We have the second leg playoffs happening this week as well. But I do want to get into the Olympics. And quickly in the Olympics, the grand winner was Norway, netting 41 total medals. We had the U.S. in second place, netting 33 total medals. And then behind the U.S. was Italy, netting 30 total medals. So you had Norway in first, the USA in second, Italy in third. Very exciting. Norway had an athlete, Johannes Kleibo, we mentioned last time, ended up finishing with 6 gold medals. That set a new Olympic record. And this guy, his cardiovascular fitness is otherworldly. In the 50-kilometer men's cross-country race, it was to see him push there at the end, the last 600, 700 kilometers where he just accelerated, where it was looking like they had nothing left in the tank, and then they make it look like a 1-kilometer sprint. Unbelievable. But obviously the highlight was on the 19th, I believe that was Wednesday, 22, 21, that was Wednesday. The U.S. women's ice hockey played Canada in the gold medal match. And it was a fun match. Canada scored to start the second period, and they held on to the lead. It was going back and forth. We go into the third period. Still 1-0. We get towards, 10 minutes left, and then you can really feel the U.S. starting to make more of an aggressive push. And then with 2 minutes left, Hillary Knight places her stick in the most perfect spot. I don't even know how you can even register how quick that puck was coming and how she placed her stick for the puck to actually just basically hit off of her stick and then jump over the keeper to ricochet off of her stick and pass the keeper. Unbelievable. So anyway, the U.S. ties it 1-1 with 2 minutes to play in the third, and it was pretty much chaos from that point on. And then they go into overtime. In overtime, you can tell these women, they're huffing and puffing, and you can even see it. They're struggling they're giving everything they have in their tank to keep up with each other because it drops to a 3-on-3 and going up and down the ice. And finally, 53 seconds into overtime, Megan Keller scores for the U.S. and secures the gold. Celebration goes crazy. Feels super good. And then at that point, you're thinking, man, it is the men's turn to do the same thing. But just a quick note on that. The last time the women's ice hockey took gold women's U.S. ice hockey took gold in the Olympics was in 98 in Nagano, Japan. And they have also won gold in 98, 18, and now 26. So that's the third U.S. gold medal for the women's ice hockey team. The men, on the other hand, first time in 46 years bringing home gold. What an exciting match as well. We had Canada also go up 1-0 in the first period, 14 minutes into the first period, or 6 minutes into the first period, pardon me. Canada goes up 1-0. No, pardon me. The U.S. went up 1-0 in the first. It was Cale Makar in the second, late in the second period, who scored for Canada to tie it 1-1. And then especially in the third period, and watching that second period, Canada got aggressive. And it really felt there was a bit of a swing, that it was going to be a tough match for the U.S. to hold on to their lead. And then if they were to give up their lead, it really felt if Canada had kept playing the way they were, it would be, let's just say I just kind of felt that it was going to end up being a disappointment. Not saying silver, I should say, is a disappointment, but having a 1-0 lead, it just felt Canada was pushing hard, and they have a lot of very skilled players as well. Third period, same thing. Canada's pushing, couple very close calls. Hellebuyck making some phenomenal saves. Just an absolute brick wall in front of the net. Takes the U.S. into overtime. And then in overtime, once again, the U.S. scores. Jack Hughes gives the U.S. the first gold medal in 46 years. That celebration, and at that moment, that just how happy those guys were. Once again, between the women U.S. ice hockey and the men's U.S. ice hockey, celebrating and winning, that right there just made me proud to be an American. It was awesome. That's why we love sports. Seeing all of those players, all the hard work they put into it, coming out with a gold, good for them. And they definitely deserved it. So that was very exciting. And then we had some news as well, turning tides here from the Olympics. We had Pat Murphy, the Brewers general manager, getting a contract extension through 2029, which makes him one of the highest paid managers in the MLB now. I think he definitely deserves it. Brewers definitely had a bit of a shaky start to the season last year, but obviously held faith, and I don't think any Brewers fan can be upset with the way the season unfolded, and I am definitely happy to have him back on board. Packers, Rich Bisaccia decided to step down. You know, we had a lot of people come out with stories about how awesome and amazing of a person Rich Bisaccia is that really makes you kind of feel sad, honestly, because of how amazing of a human being Rich Bisaccia was. And if you haven't heard some of these stories, I'd suggest maybe you go online, go on some of the socials and kind of read about what people had to say about him, and you kind of think, wow, we're actually... The Packers organization is losing a true gentleman. And so we wish him nothing but the best. But from a business and a Packers fan standpoint, I'm not going to say anything bad, but I am very excited to see not only who replaces him as the special teams coordinator, special teams coach, but the changes that they will bring to the special teams. And will the special teams continue to be the Packers' Achilles heel going into the 2026 season? I am very excited for all of those answers. And then a quick update on NFL free agency, because we are going into the NFL free agency pretty soon here. March 9th, I believe, is the first day that, phone calls and discussions can really start being made. And then with the start of the new season, of the official start of the new league year on March 11th, I believe, is the official opening of NFL free agency. And as of right now, so we just had, on the coaching side, I suppose, the latest is that Cliff Kingsbury is going to be the new Rams assistant head coach. So he's out of retirement after his ugly stint with the Cardinals. And there are a ton of players on free agency, and I see all these ESPN articles, all these NFL articles, and all these writers having these massive lists and who's going to fit excellent where, and this player needs to go here, and this is why he would fit so well here. I love the NFL, and I could do all that, look into all of it, and a lot of these players, I recognize their names. But I just put down the list, in my humble opinion, of the top names that I will be looking out for, that I am definitely curious to see what happens to these individuals, because I think that these are the individuals who can change a bit of the landscape of the NFL, and there will be a lot of narrative circulating around where they end up because of what they can bring to the table. So my first couple names here, Daniel Jones of the Colts. I imagine after the season he had, unfortunately went down with injury. Depending on how well he's relapsing or rehabbing, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up staying with the Colts. Aaron Rodgers with the Steelers is another free agent name. I mean, who knows what Rodgers is thinking. So if he does return, I imagine the big headlines will either be his return to team up with Big Mike, because Mike McCarthy is the coach of the Steelers now. So I guess it would be interesting, but to be quite honest, I don't know if it would be in Big Mike's best interest. He's done a very good job of answering those questions, but I wouldn't mind seeing Big Mike start his Steelers tenure with a fresh start, I suppose. Maybe like a Malik Willis, who is also a free agent from the Packers. And Aaron Rodgers, there's been talk about him potentially going to the Vikings. But we'll see. I don't know. If Aaron Rodgers returns to the Steelers, of course it would be fun to see him reunite with Big Mike for that tandem. But I just don't know if it would be in Big Mike's best interest. Malik Willis, obviously, just mentioned him. He's done awesome for the Packers, and I truly hope the best for him. I hope he does get a starting position, and he honestly deserves to get paid after the work that he has put in and the hope he has given the Packers fandom. Breece Hall from the Jets, will be available. He's going to be on free agency. In my eyes, he's an ultimate Swiss Army knife. He can catch balls. He's good out of the flat. He can run the ball. He's aggressive. He's more of a slice and dice than a power back. And he can apparently even throw touchdowns. So he is definitely a Swiss Army knife that I will be interested to see where he goes, because I definitely think he is a pretty big value add to any team at this point. Travis Etienne from the Jaguars is a free agent. Solid season. I wouldn't be surprised if the Jaguars try to hunt him down to come back. Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl winner from the Seahawks, is a free agent as well. I haven't necessarily heard any word. I'm wondering, I imagine the Seahawks will want to bring him back just because, well, he was your Super Bowl running back, and he practically won the Super Bowl for the Seahawks with the way he was running the ball, especially in the second half. But that is to say, he does also have some downfalls. He doesn't have that great of hands. He is not that great of a receiver. Not that he is a receiver, but he's not the best receiving back. And he can be a little bit inconsistent. There are times where it just feels like you need to light a match or you need to light a fire under him just to get him going. But when he does get going, he's very, very capable of very explosive plays, which can definitely tilt the field in your favor. So it'll be interesting to see what the Seahawks do with that, especially with Charbonnet's injury. But he is technically a free agent. You have George Pickens, wide receiver off the Cowboys. He is a big-time receiver, probably get paid. I imagine the Cowboys will franchise tag him to bring down the hit a little bit. But he is a big-time free agent. Alec Pierce off the Colts as well. I think he had a breakout season, especially he showed this past season what he's capable of doing when there's a capable quarterback throwing the ball to him. So we'll see what happens with him. Wouldn't be surprised if the Colts try to keep him as well. Romeo Doubs from the Packers. I don't think the Packers are going to hold on to old Doubs. Old Doubsy boy, unfortunately. Very reliable hands, excellent route running. But overall, I think that he has shown that he has a ceiling. Mike Evans from the Buccaneers. He is a solid vet. Just knows his place. He can catch you balls. He's been in the pressure situations. He can lead a locker room. I think it could be an excellent value add, and I think he still has one or two more seasons of solid productivity in front of him. So I'm interested to see where he falls. Deebo Samuel from the Commanders. Another one of these Swiss Army guys. You can hand the ball to him. You can throw the ball to him. He's got great hands. You look at him, he looks like a pit bull, but he's super freaking quick. Dangerous player that you need to account for on the field if you're a defense. And I also still think he has, in the proper offensive scheme, he also can be quite the value add. Definitely has another season or two of good production ahead of him, in my opinion. Kyle Pitts, tight end off the Falcons. Falcons already basically put out a statement saying that they're going to franchise tag him. I mean, rightly so. He's arguably one of the best tight ends in the league right now. Not necessarily all around, but he can bring explosiveness and route running to your offense for sure. Is he the tight end that you want in there when you need to make a hole or do a bubble screen? Or not so sure. But 3rd and 7, Kyle Pitts is definitely going to open up some field for you. And then lastly, Tyler Linderbaum, the center for the Ravens. There have been a lot of talk of him being on the free agent market, especially with how productive Henry was once again, because he had such quality blocking and the offensive line performed at such a high level. And a lot of people are pointing to Tyler Linderbaum being that reason. He was kind of the architect behind that success on the offensive line. So I think those are my top free agents that I will be looking out for, seeing what happens. Definitely keep you updated. And then I want to get quickly into the state of the Bucs. So the Bucs, we are coming out of the All-Star break last week, and so we had 2 games. We played the Pelicans, and then last night we played the Raptors. So the Bucs came out on a bit of a heater. Came out to play the Pelicans. Pelicans also bottom of the table. So it was, and especially how hot the Bucs have been or had been, we were definitely expecting or wanting or thinking it was very possible for the Bucks to win. You can already see my hesitation in talking about, the Bucks being a good team. I still have faith, but anyway, there were some good highlights that I wrote down from this match. Kuzma at one point had back-to-back kind of behind the rim one-handed dunks, which really got the crowd going. That was really exciting. Just under 6 minutes in the first quarter, we had our first defensive 3-second violation. This is so frustrating to me because I just feel I would bet my paycheck on it that at least once a game the Bucks are going to get a 3-second violation. It's kind of lazy, not so well coached defense, and they get a free throw and the ball back. It's super frustrating, especially to see that halfway through the first quarter. And in the first quarter, it seemed like we were falling into our troubles of rebounding and just not getting the rebounds that we had been getting that had put us on the heater. But then Bobby Portis, had a putback around 4 Pelicans with just under 5 to go in the first, and I thought that kind of reignited, kind of put a spark back into the guys. That was huge. Super exciting. And then obviously Cam Thomas took over in the second quarter doing, I say obviously, Cam Thomas doing Cam Thomas things. He's a bucket getter, as we all know. Took over in the second quarter. Went into half. We came out, and I know I've been talking highly about Jericho Sims, but Sims picks up, and I'll be critical when it needs to be critical, when we need to be critical. But Sims comes out in the third quarter and picks up his 4th foul with 9 to play in the third. That, I think, is one of the biggest. I think that is maybe not, if not the biggest, but that is kind of his Achilles heel right now, is he fouls too much. And to pick up the 4th with 9 minutes to play in the third, that puts Doc in kind of a not so nice situation. Especially with Giannis being out, Sims has become one of the, primary rebound getters, and has, I feel, been the spark that this team has needed to just be more aggressive under the glass and grab those rebounds, which he has definitely helped with. But when you pick up your 4th personal 3 minutes into the third quarter, you're not helping your team out, dude. And then I was super excited by Rollins. He had a huge block on a fast break layup. He had a huge block on a fast break layup, which was immediately turned into basically a fast break points for Cam Thomas. So, and at that point, instead of the Pelicans tying, we went up 2 with 2 minutes to go in the third. I thought that was a huge, even though, being tied and being down 4 points now in the modern NBA, as if it ever was that big of a deal, but you felt the momentum swing. Not swing, but you felt kind of a block of a potential momentum swing. And so big ups to Ryan Rollins for that massive block that he had, and then Cam Thomas in transition to give us a little bit extra of a cushion. So the Bucks end up beating the Pelicans. And overall, I thought it was a good game. It was hard fought, and it was a good instance of the Bucks not necessarily playing down to their opponent and being able to really finish out opponents when they have the lead. So it was definitely another good victory. Every victory at this point is good for the morale, but it felt like a good victory. And then we played the Raptors last night, and the Raptors, where to begin? They went 0 for 11 in the first quarter shooting from 3, and then they made one at the buzzer, so they actually went 1 from 12, which we didn't even see because the broadcast angle was showing something else. And then before we know it, we just saw the basketball going through the hoop and the buzzer going off. And I'm like, was that a 2? Was that a 3? Who shot that? And Sandro Mamushvili made a three because, give props to KPJ with that ISO one-on-one step-back three that looked beautiful, but then we just got lazy. That's when the broadcast kind of panned away, but I'm sure they just brought in a rebound, just brought in the pass, and then Sandro was just basically alone at the three-point line, and with only a couple seconds left, they were able to bring it up court and him to shoot a three and basically answer right in our face. We still had the lead, but it just wasn't fun seeing that. It was a bit frustrating. So the Raptors, they ended up taking, they went 1 from 12, but they ended up shooting in the game 46 threes. So they basically almost shot 12 threes every quarter. And I don't know, in the second and third quarter, it seemed like they just couldn't miss, which was super frustrating. And I think this is because you can go back and look at all the stats and say this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, and you're only going to find problems in this game. But I'm saying from the eye test, the Bucks were giving up the ball too much, too many turnovers, and the Raptors scoring too many points off those turnovers. And then the Raptors in the second and third quarter, they just seemed like they could not miss from three, and we didn't scheme anything up to try that, to put more pressure on them, to kind of change their game plan, because at that point in the second quarter, I get it, you go on a heater, but towards the second half of the second quarter, if they're still on that heater and then they come out into the second half or in the third quarter and they're still on that heater, then you need to make some adjustments. And I don't feel like the Doc made really any adjustments. And I felt this whole game, it was just a lot of ISO. It was the Bucks playing one-on-one. The Raptors have an excellent defense. Jamal Shed is another Pitbull-like player. He freaking plays so tough, phenomenal defender. And it just felt like we didn't have an answer. We weren't moving the ball around. It honestly just was a little reminiscent of the Bucks from a couple weeks ago when it was just kind of an eyesore and tough to watch. And yes, KPJ played amazing, I think he finished with 10 assists of the Bucks' 18 total assists, which says it in itself. Just no ball movement. And then once the Raptors kind of took the lead, at one point the Bucks brought it back down close to within 3, and then the Raptors just accelerated again. And I just felt that was an excellent opportunity for the Bucks to have like a come from behind win over a very good, like a decent over 500 team. It would have been huge, but instead it just went back to the same old quick to deflate Bucks. They're in the lead, and then they just ran away with it and never looked back. And then the Bucks had no answer, and we just kind of fell apart. Didn't even see Pete Nance in this one, and it just felt like it just wasn't meshing the way it has been as of late. So hopefully that changes. We'll see. Doc said in his post-game presser that it's a one-off thing. I hope he's right, because the Bucks now have 4 games coming up this week. They play the Heat, they play the Cavs, and they play the Knicks, all at home. So that's tomorrow against the Heat. Wednesday, in a back-to-back, they'll play against the Cavs. They'll have a night of rest, and then they welcome the Knicks to Fiserv Forum on Friday, and they'll close out the week in Chicago against the Bulls. That is a very tough 4-game stretch. If we can even go 2-2, I think I would be happy and say, oh, we're still here, we're still live, we're still fighting. If we lose to the Heat and then we got to go Cavs, Knicks, Bulls, there's a chance that we're going into Chicago and playing the Bulls after 0-3 on the week. And then if we drop 0-4, that's just the hopium is going to be once again at an all-time low. I don't know when Giannis is coming back at this point, but if we can at least beat the Heat tomorrow, okay. I'm actually not legitimately expecting us to beat the Cavs or the Knicks, but if we can put up a decent fight, I would love to see it. And then hopefully we can take care of business against the Bulls. So if we can go 2-2, I think is the standard, is what we should be aiming for. And then in the meantime, get some sort of freaking news on when Giannis is going to come back, just to continue to give us a fighting chance. So that's where the Bucks are right now. And then just quickly my thoughts. And then I can maybe expand on them next time. But in the NFL, I wanted to look back at the rule changes that had been put in place for the 2025 season with the kickoff and the replay assistance and what can and cannot be overturned by replay or looked at by replay, etc. I just wanted to take maybe a little bit of a deeper look into what kind of effect that had on the overall gameplay for this past season, because I was looking back and I was thinking about it. I think honestly the biggest problem in the NFL right now are the rules. Actually, there are just so many. For as much as I love the NBA, or the NFL, I also do love the NBA, but the NFL has so many rules right now that and I'm always trying to get people on board to watch NBA games with me, to watch NFL games with me, who aren't big sports fans. I get excited. I say, you got to check this out. Just watch this with me. And NBA is a little easier, but NFL is probably my favorite. But getting someone on board for the first time, introducing them to the NFL, it is so difficult because of how many rules there are. And then these judges have to arbitrarily throw flags in certain circumstances. It's just become so complex. And what other sport do we need an official rules analyst popping up 4 or 5 times a game to give us, to essentially clarify the wording or a definition of what just happened on the field in terms of the players and the commentators, and was it a catch, and is that considered a hold? And it gets, even for the most stout fans as myself, it can feel a little overwhelming sometimes. And I just think that going forward, if you're trying to expand the base, and there are a lot of people who love the sport out there, but to even try to get more people on board, it's so overwhelming that to take that first initial step can be, scary, I suppose, for lack of a better word, but can be intimidating, definitely. And every sport has refereeing issues. I get it. But that was kind of my thought there. I'll put a little more thought onto it, maybe refine a little bit. And then in the NBA, I just wanted to say quickly, with all of this tanking issues, the biggest issue that I have with the NBA right now is, yes, the tanking is definitely an issue, and I think it has become such a big issue because of where it happens within the season. The Super Bowl, it's all about NFL playoffs. Everybody's, NBA obviously is still going on in the background, but the main focus is the NFL and the NFL playoffs. And then we have the Super Bowl, and then literally the day after the Super Bowl, there's no NFL left, and it is all eyes on NBA. This is mid-February, and this is exactly the time when teams start tanking. And when you have teams that start to tank on any given night where you have a full NBA slate of 9, 10, 11 games, some of these times you're almost talking about half of these games, or even more than half of these games, are with teams that are obviously tanking. And it doesn't put good product out for even the everyday fan. And the issue does need to be addressed, and it is being addressed. And apparently Adam Silver has, ideas that they're going to judge and toy with and tweak. And, you can listen to Shams. He's tweeting out new ideas almost every day about what they're thinking of. Whether it's actually true or not, I will let you determine for yourself. But I just wanted to say one thing about an idea, obviously, that has been shot across, and I know this is going to come across as yet another idea to fix the NBA tanking, but I just don't understand why people are so quick to dismiss the idea of relegation. And I think this totally fixes the problem. And for me, the issues I have with the relegation is because it can make it potentially a little unfair for these players who get drafted into the NBA, their first, second, third draft, round pick. More often than not, they go to teams that are potentially or likely to see the bottom of the table. So these players, there will be instances where these players basically get drafted into the NBA, spend one season into the NBA, and then they get dropped down into the G League because they got drafted by a team that was unable to compete in the NBA. And I think for that specific reason or scenario, you can have, because we love rules up here and we love rules, we can have some protections in place, I don't know, say for these players to also have an option on their contract to be out and to get out from that team in the scenario they drop down into the G League. And then also other players can also have specifics within their contract that if the team that they are playing for drops into the G League, there's also a potential out for them if there is a team in the NBA who will be willing to, take on their services. Will they potentially need to see a bit of a contract cut for that? Maybe. I don't know exactly the specifics, but that's why you don't want to get relegated. And I think it works out very well because as of right now, I feel the commissioner is a shill for all of these owners. And it should be the other way around because there's so much clamor for a shorter NBA season, more protection for some of these players. It would be heighten the interest of the fans, to remove these tanking ideas. But it just seems the more we talk about it, the more it's going the opposite direction. More games and, more probabilities for these lower end teams to get more ping pong balls, to get higher draft, the NFL has done it so well with every team every year has arguably hope that they can make it into the playoffs and they can go the distance. And the NBA needs to replicate that. And this whole tanking situation, yes, and Mark Cuban came out and he said, tanking allowed us essentially to get Luka is what he was referring to. I don't know. I mean, relegation for me is just it's the answer because there's risk in business. And if you want to go into business and if you want to own a sports team, the risk is that you drop down into relegation. So do what you need to do without needing to drop into relegation as opposed to just wanting more games because it increases the bottom line. Even though you're hurting your star players, we're talking about these star franchise players who basically these 10 dudes are the face of the NBA, but out of 82 games or possibly even 83, how many games do they show up in? And if you don't show up in at least 65, you're not even eligible to have all these MVP and these season awards, individual awards. It is just absolutely, it's relegation. I think it's never going to happen, unfortunately. But I can dream. Anyway, I don't want to get too crazy and go way too in depth about it. Maybe leave a comment if you like it. We can hit a little bit more. I can put a little more thought into it, come up with a little more specifics because it's kind of fun to think about. But could you imagine, the New Orleans Pelicans needing to go into Oshkosh, Wisconsin to play G League? Or even Oshkosh, some of these little towns and these little villages, these little cities having all of a sudden a team in the NBA. That's exciting. That would be super exciting for them and their fan base. And instead of adding 2 more teams into the league to expand the NBA, why don't these 2 more teams be teams promoted from the G League because we have NBA teams that are incapable of competing in the NBA? Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. Maybe I'll come back in and chime in on a Thursday or Friday. Please leave a comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.